What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today, we're examining what marriage looks like in the Bible. In this first video, Dr. Jennifer Bird and I discuss Genesis chapter 1 verses 28 and 29 and how it doesn't actually prescribe heterosexual marriage. Dr. Bird starts off by explaining that Genesis chapter 1 verse 28 isn't actually a proclamation for people to get married because it applies to all of creation, including those organisms that don't get married. So if you want to find out how Genesis chapter 1 verses 28 and 29 don't actually prescribe a traditional heterosexual marriage, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. And today we have an interview, so I'm not critically analyzing apologist arguments or anything. I'm talking with Dr. Jennifer Bird here about her book, which I've got a physical copy of, Marriage in the Bible, this is a topic that I've really kind of been focusing on here lately just because of the almost visceral reaction I get from Christians as well as atheists on occasion whenever I talk about the treatment of women in the Bible and just in general the relationships, how relationships are portrayed in the Bible. And I got Dr. Jennifer Bird here who wrote the book Marriage in the Bible, and I've been pounding through it. I'm only 77 pages in, so I'm about nearly halfway through it, and I'm going to continue. I read it when I can. And I just want to say, great book so far. But Dr. Bird, do you want to sort of introduce yourself to, who you are, what you do and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, sure. The things I think that relate to me in this context and in terms of my book, right? So I am a biblical scholar. So I have a PhD in New Testament and early Christianity. I got that from Vanderbilt in 2007. I did go to seminary before that. Seminary is a 3-year degree. So I went to Princeton Theological Seminary, and that's where things kind of kicked off in a very different direction for me. I can say that growing up, I was part of a Methodist family, Christian, United Methodist, and I took a really hard swing to the right theologically in my teens and 20s. So I was an evangelist, not just evangelical, but I was an evangelist for a few years, 6 years or so. And I was reading the Bible very literally, relatively speaking, pretty literally, and then I had someone show me a way to read the Mary and Martha passage that radically changed the way I saw that passage, but it also did something for me personally. And when she showed me that, I thought, she's attending to the Greek, and that's honoring the Greek in this passage, and it changed something for me. What else is out there that I'm missing, right? So that's what sent me to seminary eventually. So I went to seminary very conservative, very, this is God's word, inspired, all that, and memorizing lots of passages and bringing people to Jesus. And I left a very different person because I started thinking about things a little bit differently. And, when people today talk about deconstructing something like that, right? I went through that process, but it wasn't being called that at the time. And I think what I went through was more like being better informed. I became better educated on these topics, all of it, like, learning the biblical languages, biblical Hebrew, Greek, and eventually I learned Aramaic, or studied it, I should say. Like that, but also like the history of the church and the history of dogma and the history of all the ideas. And so everything just, when you start to look at that for yourself instead of just agreeing with all of it, that just changed something for me. So anyway, so that's why I ended up going to PhD work, so I could be hopefully taken a little bit more seriously. And this topic, marriage in the Bible, is important to me for the reasons you mentioned already, right? Women, how are relationships depicted, but also the issue of marriage equality. Like I am for, I'm an ally. I'm for marriage equality, but I'm also not interested in telling people what to think or believe about things. So I wrote this book because I know so many people who are both like either Christian and in churches, and they want to affirm same-sex marriage, or people who are who aren't religious, but they don't understand why people who are get so hung up on these things, right? So I wanted to help people. I wanted to offer a space, a way for people to this is what's going on, to think about it for yourself, and then decide, is that something you want to be importing into the present, right? Um, so that, there's a lot, I think, going on in this book, but I'm interested in helping people sit with the passages, sit with the biblical text first. I'm not trying to make them say what I want them to say, right? So, and then we can talk about, well, okay, how does that relate to today or not? Or, oh my goodness, this is still playing out in our lives today. And perhaps part of the reason for that is because people are so well informed and trained by these passages and ways of thinking about relationships and so forth. So I hope that's not too long of an intro. I wasn't sure
No.
how long to talk about myself here, but it's a really important book to me. It feels like a culmination of about 30 years of life and experience and trying to have these conversations with people. So yeah, it's an important book to me. So I hope it helped,
Yeah.
and I hope it helps some people. That's it, right?
I mean, it's already helped me, and I'll get
Mm,
into that here
mm,
in a second. It was the same things that I talked to you about before we went
mhm,
live, but
mhm,
I do want to say that something you said in your intro there reminded me that it was about you sort of going deeper into like the biblical languages and everything like
mhm,
that.
mhm.
I've actually, as I've engaged more people like on topics in the Bible and everything like that, I've actually been called by another atheist a closeted Christian. Uh, but because I take the time to like understand the biblical languages, like I would not say that I'm literate like
Mhm.
in either Koine Greek or Hebrew, but I know how to look up words and understand the context and use like a lexicon in order to understand like what they're actually saying in the passage. Like I
Okay,
know how to do that, and
okay.
so in doing that, I've had people be like, "Are you sure you're not a Christian? Because you're sounding Christian right now." Because they were an atheist making like really kind of outrageous comments about like I believe it was Paul's letters, and he was
Mm,
changing words around. I was like, oh, okay, well let's go back to the original Greek. And so I
okay,
would like
okay.
pull up an interlinear and I'd look at it and we'd examine the words that are used in the right context and everything. And so he's like, "Are you Christian? Like, are you really a Christian here? Because you're making a Christian argument." I'm like, "No, I'm just."
I'm just trying to
You know
honor the text, right?
right,
You don't have to
exactly.
have any specific set of beliefs in order to want to respect the text, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Which kinda leads us into our first, topic that I wanna talk about. Because in your book, Marriage in the Bible, which everybody I have linked down below, if you want to go and hit that up, and you can get it either on Kindle, or, physical hard copy like I've got both. But, um, I like having the Kindle version because then I can just search up topics if I need to, like,
Mhm,
after I finish reading it. Like, if I
mhm.
know it's in there and I don't know where exactly, I can
Remember where
just
it was.
search it.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you start out the book primarily talking about two Genesis passages that are primarily used to sort of establish traditional marriage. I'm wondering if you can kind of briefly go over that and talk about like what these passages actually mean and
Mhm.
what what the verbiage or the language that's used there. What does that indicate? Like the author's thought about as far as relationships go between men and women.
Mm, mhm. Yeah, just that. Okay, and how much time did you
I'm
say we
sorry.
have?
I know.
I know,
It's
I
a
know.
lot.
It's all good, it's all good. I love it, really, 'cause you're getting at what's going on here and what it's what matters. So, okay, so the first 2 chapters, well, just let me just say briefly that the first 4 chapters in this book, are the 4 biblical passages that Christians usually refer to help them define this concept of biblical marriage. So, that would be Genesis 1:28 and Genesis 2:24, which you just asked me to discuss, and then also Matthew 19, 4 to 6, and Ephesians 5, 31 and 32. So they each of those passages gets a chapter in this book. So Genesis 1:28 is the passage that says, I'm just gonna make sure I don't misquote it because I off the top of my head I sometimes miss boop-a-doo. uh God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." And then, of course, it goes on to thank you. Yeah. Um, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and of the birds of the air and ever living things. But the part that people quote is just that first part, right? Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. So Genesis 1. Okay, so when I talk about what's going on in these stories, in these biblical passages, I want to talk about what is this story doing. Like chapter 1 of Genesis, and it kind of spills over into chapter 2, is one of the first two creation stories, right? Most people think of Genesis 1 and 2 as one story, that the Genesis 1 is the daily thing, and then Genesis 2 is just giving us more specifics. That's how most people are taught to read it. But they're actually two separate stories, and they actually have a different order of creation, and they're talking about different things, and that's a whole thing to get into, which we won't get into now, but it's a part of what I try to help people see, right? That so that we're going to honor, like you were just talking about, right? Let's honor what's going on in these stories. What are they trying to communicate? What are they trying to talk about? So, the first creation story is doing this daily, creation thing. And then at the end, on the final day, all the land animals and so all the mammals and humans are created. And so when you look at the story overall, God looks at the fish in the sea and says, "Be fruitful and multiply." He's probably not telling them to go get married.
Right.
And then the land animals, right? Everybody's supposed to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and the humans, of course, are the ones being given that particular command in this case. But that's just what we're doing. What the story is doing or talking about is this big picture about the world and human relationships, partnering up and reproducing is just a part of that. Be fruitful and multiply. When people say that this is God ordaining marriage, or this is God's idea for marriage, that it needs to be between a man and a woman because only a man and woman can reproduce, right? That is putting onto this passage our current needs and expectations about things, right? I realized when I was actually not long before I wrote the book, so when I was getting into this work, trying to help people see what is actually being said about marriage in the Bible, I realized I was reading this passage through the lens of marriage because they're going to have sex. If you're going to reproduce, it requires sex. And so I was putting onto this passage that God is talking about marriage.
Mhm.
But really, it's just talking about a general thing about life. In fact, really, or to come at it differently, it's not like they needed that command in order to get out there making babies, like get busy making babies, right? The animals on the planet and the fish in the sea weren't going to, they were waiting for that command in order to reproduce. No, nobody needs to be told to get busy making babies and having sex, right? So the story is talking about something bigger and, in a sense, more generic than specifically being about marriage. Um, and there's no language about marriage, right? It's just that he's looking at humans and get out there and do your thing, right? It's more like and in fact, most Jewish contexts, this is seen as a blessing, right? It's seen as may you be fruitful, like go do your thing, the thing you want to get busy doing. um and another way to look at this is to look at the next verse. So people look at Genesis 1:28 as if it's this universal command that you need to get busy making babies and you can only do it on but then people don't even know what 129 says, which is hilarious because it says that we're supposed to be vegans. Right? I mean,
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
if you ask Ken Ham,
Oh dear.
everybody was a vegan, even the carnivores that were in the Garden of Eden. He's got a book. I've got it somewhere here. He's got a book where he's got this Tyrannosaurus Rex with these sharp teeth, and it's like eating an apple.
Oh,
So
oh,
or
oh, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Okay, it's funny, but it's also he needs the Bible to be right, like
Mhm.
because it suggests here in Genesis 1 that even all of the animals are only eating vegetation, right? Which isn't true, right?
Right.
So, oof, Ken Ham. Anyway, um, yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like maybe I haven't done this one justice this morning very well, but be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Like that's not a command specifically about marriage. Is the starting point here for me? It's not about marriage. It's about God in a sense in the story blessing what not entirely, not everyone wants to get married, not everyone wants to have sex, right? But most people, most beings have a desire to reproduce and all that. So that's one of the things about that's the main thing I think for now about Genesis 1:28. Genesis 2:24 is actually my favorite to talk about because
Uh,
what? Yeah.
oh,
Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
No.
Before we move on from that,
Yes, please.
generally, how is this verse used, like, in the discussion on traditional marriage and, like,
Oh.
marriage equality?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of biblical marriage, it's used to say only a man and a woman can get married because only a man and a woman can reproduce.
Mhm.
And for me, in the context of marriage equality thinking, not that I'm trying to turn this into something that supports what I think, because that's not, I don't want to do that. But for me, I think it's looking, we need to pull back from it and see what is it talking about. And so, there are all kinds of ways that humans show up in the world that are different from any particular command in the Bible, right? Like we
Mhm.
can't all do all the things, or we aren't all geared for, not all women actually want to be happy homemakers, like it's just a generic, right?
Yeah.
Many of the biblical passages make it seem like we should be. But that forcing us to do that just because we have certain body parts, like that doesn't work, right? So that's my approach to let's just see what it's talking about instead of seeing it as a command for all time. Does that make sense, what I'm getting at
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, heathens, for watching my conversation with Dr. Jennifer Bird. If you would like to continue this discussion, either stay tuned or click this video. Otherwise, before you go, make sure you go down below and leave a comment with your thoughts on this section of the discussion. While you're down there, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And as always, don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.